Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show today. And today I got a pretty interesting topic for you guys. And the topic is why the Clippers are a dangerous team or a completely different team when Paul George plays well with Kawhi Leonard, when the two of these guys play well together. So that's the topic I want to get into in today's video. But before we go too far, I want you guys to please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Also, if you want to check out the Dreamerspro Show on our podcast, we're going to link that in the description below. We're on Spotify and iTunes. So please make sure you guys go ahead and check that out so you don't, for people that like to listen to podcasts, we created that for you. So that's there. So let me just get straight into this topic here. So it's been a pretty crazy series for the Clippers and more importantly for Paul George. So today I'm just going to give you guys a recap of the game that I watched last night. And then I'm also going to give you some of my thoughts on Paul George and the Clippers as a whole moving forward, to just sort of finish off this video. So last night watching the game, first thing I noticed is that the Mavericks came out pretty hot in the first quarter hitting their threes. They hit 3 threes, and I think in the first 2 or 3 minutes in the game. Now, looking at Paul George was sort of the theme, the main storyline of the game. And all of us were trying to see, is he going to play well? Is he going to show us that, he has the heart of a champion and, has heard all of the criticism that everyone has been saying. And, to his credit, he himself said that, listen, if I had been playing better, this would be a different series. And I believed him. And it's one of the reasons why I actually picked the Clippers to win this series in 5 games. No one, if you had told me up until that point that Paul George would be averaging about 15 points a game, shooting 29% from the field and 26% from the three, I would have said that's impossible because I have never seen him play that poorly. So there was no reason for me to even assume something like that because it had never happened before. So, him playing that poorly was something that was just completely unforeseen. In the last game, in Game 4, I believe it was, he scored 9 points. He had 7 points in the first half and 2 points in the second half. And he wasn't aggressive throughout the game. And obviously, the Clippers made some blunders in the ending moments of that game with their switching and Kawhi Leonard not fighting over the screen, all these different things. Needless to say, Kawhi played well overall. Lou Williams played well, and they were in that game. They could have won that game. But we know that had Paul George been playing better, that would have been a different game. It would have been a different series, and that's why I picked him in 5. So last night when he came out, PG, I had my eyes on him, and I'm sure everyone in the arena and in the sports world was watching Paul George. And he came out, he was very aggressive, and he was attacking, and he had a quick 6 points out the gate. Now, I wasn't too excited because I believe it was in Game 4, he had 7 points in the first quarter. So I wasn't like, okay, wow, he got his mojo back because he fizzled out in that game too. So, I wasn't too excited about that. I was still watching him. Now, Kawhi Leonard was steady, especially he was playing solid on-the-ball defense. Excuse the noise outside. There are a lot of trucks going by. Now, with the combination of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in the first quarter, when they started to play well together, you could see the Clippers really started to get into a flow. And the Clippers quickly went on an 18-0 run, even though the Mavs were leading early in the game. And they went on an 18-0 run to the point where they had an 18-31 point lead in that first quarter. And Kawhi Leonard started to dominate, especially early in that first quarter. He had 13 points in the first quarter. And the Clippers, you could see, were playing with a lot of urgency, which they needed to play with because you don't want to give, Dallas a lot of confidence because it's a very dangerous team, especially offensively. You don't want to give these guys a lot of confidence for them to feel, we can actually beat you. And it's one thing for teams to believe that they can beat another team. It's another thing if they beat you and they continue to beat you, then they really grow confident. Now, if we look at Kawhi Leonard's numbers in these playoffs in the 5 games, he's playing 39 minutes a game. He's averaging 33 points a game, which is, as I said before, if you look at Kawhi Leonard, he gets better in the playoffs. And actually, he has better numbers these playoffs, if we're looking at points at least, than he did last playoffs. Last playoffs, he had 30. He averaged 30 points a game. Now, granted, he played 24 games last playoffs, and he's only played 5. So I'll keep an eye on him for that. He's shooting a better field goal percentage. He's shooting 52.3% compared to last season where he shot 49%. So he's doing well. As I said in the last episode of the show, I said his 3-point percentage will go up, and the last game he played, I think, was at 28%. Now it's at 30%. So I look for that to go up. He's shooting 84% from the free throw line. The guy is getting you he's getting you 9.4 rebounds. Which is pretty much on par with what he averaged last season in the playoffs. So 9.1. He's getting you 4.8 assists, which he's averaging more assists this playoffs, about one more assist than he did last season. And he's getting you 1.8 steals. So Kawhi Leonard is playing like a Finals MVP, which he is. And there's no surprise when it comes to his numbers and his productivity. Now, if we look at Paul George, mind you, I said he was averaging 15 points last season. In the first 4 games. But with his performance last night, his average went up to 19 points a game. His field goal percentage went from 29 to 37%. So he's improving that. His 3-point percentage is still low at 27%. But his free throw percentage is still at 100%. He's shooting 100% from the free throw line. And he's getting you 6.4 rebounds and 3.4 assists and 1.2 steals. So Paul George looks like he's beginning to turn it around. So you can see the Clippers were playing with a lot of urgency in that first quarter, but I was looking to see how they ended the quarter, because last game they were playing really well and they couldn't finish off the half. In this particular game, they were able to finish off the first quarter with a good ending, so they didn't give up any late runs or anything like that. So that was good. Now, moving into the second quarter, however, you could see that they seem to keep their concentration, which is something that worries me, because whenever they get out to a big lead, as they did the game before, I think they were up like 20 plus points on the Mavs, you get comfortable. And the reason I believe that is, once you have such a big lead in a game, your competitiveness sort of dips because the other team is not challenging you. So for you to keep that same level of intensity is quite hard. It's like, fighting someone. You've seen a boxer fighting someone in the ring, and the other guy he's pretty much giving up, unless he wants to like beat him down to the ground. It's hard for you to keep that same intensity when the other person is not really fighting you back. But they were able to keep that level of concentration. And the thing that it reminded me of was Kobe, when I watched the clip of Kobe in the Western Conference Finals against the Denver Nuggets. That's when the Denver Nuggets were trying to stop them. This was when they were going in back-to-back runs to the NBA championship. And Kobe Bryant said in the huddle when they were beating them, he said, "Hey man, no mercy, no mercy, no mercy." Meaning we're beating them, but we need to beat these guys to a pulp. And what I think he was saying is keep the concentration, don't take your foot off the gas. And I was impressed that they were able to do that. Now PG remained aggressive, which is something I liked, and that's the only way for him to get out of his slump. And he had 18 points in the first half, and he was showing that he had some mental toughness. That listen. I'm an exceptional scorer, and he showed that with 18 points in the first half. Now, Reggie Jackson and the bench players played well in the second quarter. I think they gave him some good minutes. They gave him a punch off the bench. They helped them extend their lead, which was really good. And you could see immediately that it was a completely different game when PG was playing well. It was a completely different game. The game had a totally different complexion, which is something that I noticed. And they finished the first half with a 53-76 lead. They were up. They had 76 points in the first half, which is astonishing when you think about it. Now, in the second half, PG came out and he was playing well. He had a quick 5 points. I think he hit a 3, and then he got a 2-pointer. But then there was a strange 2-minute stretch in that third quarter. And before you know it, PG was at like 20. He scored like 9 quick points. And before you know it, he was at 27 points. It was absurd how, with fouls and technicals, Luka Doncic having a technical at one point, the Dallas Mavericks coach got thrown out of the game. But then quickly, the Clippers were able to jump out to a 30-point lead in that third quarter. And Kawhi Leonard, at certain points, he lost the ball on some double teams. I think Kawhi Leonard is trying to get used to these double teams, but I can understand the defensive scheme of the Dallas Mavericks. They're like, listen, this guy's playing out of his mind. Okay, he's playing out of his mind. There's nothing we can do with him. So let's double him. And given that his co-star is struggling, let's force him and others to beat us. So whenever he catches the ball, let's just try to double team him. But if Paul George is playing amazingly well, you can't double team Kawhi. This is the reason why it's so important for PG to play well, because it allows Kawhi Leonard to play one-on-one. Similarly to the way you saw Kevin Durant with the Golden State Warriors, when you KD's on the floor with Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, who are you doubling, right? Who are you sagging off? And then they put in their death lineup, as they call it. Who are you doubling? So if you allow Kevin Durant to play one-on-one, he's going to beat you every single time. And that's the reason why if you see Paul George playing well, it opens up Kawhi Leonard's game. And, that's how they were able to, both of them were able to score 30-plus points in that game quite easily. Now, the Mavs, to their credit, they kept playing, they kept fighting, they kept clawing. But Kawhi Leonard dominated that third quarter, and he had 10 points in the third quarter. And going into the fourth, he already had 32 points. So Kawhi Leonard was on fire, but PG was the guy that we were all looking at. And he remained aggressive, and he was in the fourth quarter, and before you know it, he had 30 points. And I looked up at the box score at one point. I looked at Paul George and Kawhi Leonard together had scored like 67 points. And if we look at the box score here, PG finished the game with 35 points in 25 minutes, which means he was very efficient. He was hot. He was getting off his shots. Marcus Morris played well. He gave him some good minutes. He had 12 points, 4 assists, 6 rebounds. That was good. Ivica Zubac got them 9.7 rebounds. That was solid. Landry Shamet has been playing well, especially defensively, and he looks like he's been hitting his shots. So that's a welcoming sign. He got you 11 points. Montrezl Harrell looked like he was rounding back into his into shape, getting back into the form he was playing in. He got 19 points and 11 rebounds coming off the bench, which is typical numbers for him. Reggie Jackson gave him some good minutes. He got them 11 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. Lou Williams got them 8 points, but you can't really knock Lou Williams because Lou Williams got you 36 points the other night. Now, on the Mavericks side, Tim Hardaway Jr. got 19 points. Maxi Kleber, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, got you 12 points. Luka Doncic got you 22 points, but you can see that Luka was out there pretty much laboring, and you can see that the Dallas Mavericks missed Kristaps Porzingis. Trey Burke got you 15 points. Seth Curry did not have the same game he had the day before. He only had 4 points. So my overall takeaway was that this game wasn't really close, and at a certain point, they just took out the starters, and it was just a bunch of garbage time. So I actually didn't finish the game because it wasn't competitive anymore, so there was no need for me to watch. Now, before I conclude the video, let me just give you my final thoughts on the original topic of this video. So, one thing, the Clippers are a different team when PG plays well. As you saw that last night, they're a completely different team. They're much more difficult to guard when you have this guy playing well. And I think if Kawhi and Paul George if that game was close, they could have both put up 40 points each in that game. So that's the one thing. Him playing well also provides more spacing on the floor. It allows other players to play one-on-one because you can't double team anyone. You can't play a lot of help defense because everyone is a threat. So that's another thing. It also allows Kawhi and him to play elite on the ball defense, because essentially what I believe happens is if Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are playing well, what it allows either of them to do is say, okay, listen, since you're carrying the offense, let me play great defense on this perimeter score, and vice versa. But if one of them is not playing well and you need a lot of defense, you need great defense, then the scoring has to come from somewhere, and it puts too much of a burden on one of the stars. When both of them are playing well, also enhances their defense, and the team is overall harder to guard because you have to respect their ability to drive and their ability to hit threes, especially in this case of Paul George. So for me, I think the Clippers are very dangerous when the two of them are playing well, especially PG. Kawhi has shown that he can be a much more consistent scorer in the playoffs because he did it all last season, and he's doing it this playoffs as well. But PG needs to be the key. He needs to be the one that's really clicking. And if he does so, then the Clippers will live up to all of the expectations that all of us had about them going into these playoffs. So what I want to know from you guys is, what do you think about my analysis? What do you think about the way Paul George played? And do you agree with the fact that if PG is on his A game, that the Clippers are a really dangerous team in the playoffs? That's what I want to know from you guys. So whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro. Wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.